So how can you get to the top without burning out? So that's the question we're going to help you answer today. And here's the thing, like if you're watching this channel, you're a leader or an entrepreneur. You're probably also a parent because that's one of our near and dear core values here. And with everything going on, you still want to make a huge impact in the world, right? And generally what that requires is some extra time, some effort, and maybe even this S word called sacrifice. But here's the thing, like when we talk about like taking on more, getting to the next level, it's very easy to start to convince yourself to pull from different areas of your life. So maybe if you're right now, you're experiencing this of like, what happens when I do make it? What happens if I put all this time and energy into my career, into my business, into my family, or whatever it is, and I get pulled away from my mission, from the thing that's going to make the biggest impact in the world? That, my friend, is called burnout. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today, because burnout is a real thing. Not only have I personally experienced it several times, one time actually helping me develop an autoimmune disease that I now have to struggle with, but I want to make sure that you understand what this looks like and give you the strategies to, number one, make sure it doesn't ever happen to you. But number two, if you're starting to go down that path, that you lean in to what we're going to share here today and follow these strategies to literally change the game for you. Now, before we dive into the strategies around burnout, we got to ask ourselves, what are the symptoms? What are the signs? What are some of the things that I might be experiencing right now that will tell me I'm leading down this path? One of the things that's so powerful about life coaching is when you get to the root of the actual issue, what's kind of like you become aware of the thing that's actually holding you back, or you become aware of something starting to take hold of you, you now have the power to change it. If you never slow down enough to actually think about it, to figure out like, am I going down this path? Is this the path of burnout or is this the path of success? And you don't know what those two are, like you're just going to keep going down the path. And we don't want you to do that. So I was looking up Google and I typed in, what are the common signs of burnout? And first off, it was 72 pages worth of signs. And I'm like, okay, this is a little bit too much. But I pulled out some of the key ones that, number one, if I had known, I would have been like, okay, I'm starting to experience burnout. And I want to share with you guys here today. Not only when I was going through my career, but also when it comes to my business and all of the things that I was adding to my plate, okay? So what does and what is burnout? So burnout is a state of chronic physical and emotional exhaustion. Can you picture it already? So it's a state of physical and emotional exhaustion, often accompanied by doubts about the value of one's work or contributions. Crazy, right? It obviously can significantly impact our health, our well-being, our emotional state, and believe it or not, our performance, how we show up when we're burning out. Let me tell you, how Mark was showing up when I was burning out was not how I'm showing up now. And when you take full charge of it, you actually show up with a different level of energy. So when you do take those actions, it makes a lot bigger of a difference. Because if you can think about this logically, when somebody's taking a ton of action and they're just like, their energy's off, they're not leaning into their heart. Yes, they're checking a lot of boxes, but sometimes it probably would have been better if they had taken no action at all. But if you take the right actions and you do it from the right energy and you're excited about it, you're leaning into your heart, it is not only two entirely different paths, but this is the path of you doing less and achieving more. And this is the path of you doing more and burning yourself out. And we don't want to get there, right? So the common signs, let's talk about some of the physical symptoms. If you have chronic fatigue or feeling drained most of the time, Kurt, my good friend, sounds like we are on the path to burnout. No. Chronic fatigue or feeling like you're drained all the time. Number two is sleeping difficulties, either insomnia or oversleeping. Yeah, can you believe that? Emotional symptoms, feelings of detachment or alienation from others, loss of motivation and passion for your job or for your business, feeling of hopelessness or being trapped in where you currently are, and increased irritability or reduced patience with others. So what happens when you go through burnout? Just ask Mr. Mark, because he does not have really good patience with his kids. And so that is just another one of those things. What are you going to say?
This is like parallels parenting.
It does. It does. Behavioral signs. Hold on. I'm only halfway there. Behavioral signs. Kate says it's not him. Withdrawing from responsibilities or procrastinating more often. That's what some people do. Some people do the opposite, which we'll talk about in a second. Isolating yourself from colleagues, friends, or family. Anybody been in isolation mode? Using food, drugs, or alcohol as coping mechanisms to feel better, right? Number 4 is neglecting personal needs. Everybody listen up for this one, all right? Listen, my friends, up to this one. Number 1, skipping meals or not taking breaks, okay? overworking, including working during off hours or weekends consistently, and ignoring personal health or well-being in favor of work. Okay, guys, out of all of those, tell me what you're experiencing here in the chat. I mean, I'm going to be honest, like looking at some of these, I'm like, oh, okay, that's something that I find myself doing. Sometimes I get so excited about like coaching and going through that process, I like forget to eat lunch. And I'm like, oh, it's 2:00. I should probably eat lunch. But these things, when you have the totality of them and they keep adding up, could potentially lead you to burnout. Now, burnout, it manifests differently in everyone. So just because we talked about those things, those symptoms of burnout, does not mean that one or two or a couple of those is actually going to lead you to burnout. It's the combination of multiple different factors and you not taking control over the things you can control. And by doing that, we all have a different threshold that we actually hit when we experience burnout. So it's a personal thing. But here's the thing, we're going to give you some strategies today that actually helped us get from this place of burnout to reducing a lot of that stuff, not completely eliminating it, by the way, guys, because life is about stress too. It's about the kind of stress that pushes you and gets you to grow and gets you to level up, not the kind of stress that's like this compounding thing that gets us to shut down. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about the two different types of stress, right? And when we lean into the stress that pushes us to grow, like working out, stretching our muscles, it actually gets us to come even better. But what happens if we work out, take this good thing, right? This good thing is working out and we do it for 8 hours a day, where we're going to break down and we're going to technically burn out. And that's what we want to make sure that we don't do, all right? So if you are, number one, some of these symptoms are kind of coming up for you and you're like, okay, I'm ready to lean in. Let's try to figure this out so we don't have to go down that path. Number two is you're just like, I just want to avoid this at all costs. So like, give me the notes that you just shared, Mark, so I can make sure that I don't go down those paths. Or number three, you're currently experiencing this right now. This call is going to be helpful. But I want to have one caveat here too. In order for me to successfully navigate burnout, I also needed some professional help. So it's a personal thing, but I also don't want you to think that going through a YouTube video is going to help you get through burnout or through like this overexhaustion in your body, all right? I hope it helps. I mean, it definitely would have helped me, but I know for me personally, I had to go to seek therapy. I had to go to a counselor. I had to get some help through it, and there is no shame in that game. If you want to get back quicker, if you feel like you're not moving, you feel like you're stuck, get some professional help. And also continue listening to this because I'm sure you're going to hear some of the things that we talk about here today that literally I learned from my therapist, literally I learned from getting counseling so that I can get past it onto the other end. So that is what we are talking about. So guys, welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. That's what we're going to talk about, how we can see burnout and see these things differently, all right? So we help entrepreneurs and leaders excel like in their professional life so they can make a huge impact in the world without having to burn themselves out or sacrifice family time. I mean, that's literally in our slogan, guys, without having to burn ourselves out. How we do that is Monday and Tuesday, we have shorter videos. And on Saturdays, we have longer workshops where we can take a deeper dive into some of the things we're talking about today. I mean, it's already been 10 minutes. We've already been done. Kurt would have been like, dude, Mark, shut up. We got enough stuff here. But we get to take a deeper dive to really help you get to the root of what's going on, make you aware of it, and give you some solutions to figure it out, okay? Now, burnout prevention is critical. I mean, we kind of have talked about the impact that it can make in your life, but also how you show up. But the truth is like where we are right now, a lot of you guys are in high stress situations, whether it's a business or a career or both or parenting, and you've got young kids. Our daughter turns 13 tomorrow. Like you might have those moments where you're like, this is a high stress situation. That means it's even more critical, which is why we want to dive into these 10 strategies to help you prevent and mitigate burnout for good, all right? Now, I know I talked for a long time. Teresa, thank you so much for being patient. I think I actually even start out with number one, but do you want to say something, anything that we talked about so far, like that really speaks to you?
No, let's jump in. Let's jump right in for the tips.
So number one, guys, number one tip is to set clear boundaries, all right? I'm actually going to type it here. Set clear, oh, Kurt, bro, why you always put me to shame? Setting clear boundaries. Now, when we come to setting clear boundaries, like figuring out when you're going to work, when you're going to spend time with family, when you're going to work out, when you're going to have some time with just yourself, when are you going to have, figuring out what those boundaries are is, for me, it's always the first step. It's leaning in and figuring out like, how do I want this day to go? Like Jim Rohn says, I don't start the day until it's finished. I don't start the week before it's finished, and I don't start the month until it's finished. And what he means is he plans it out in advance. He sits down and he goes, where are my hours? Where am I going to be working? When am I going to be doing this? And just like how you would put an appointment on your calendar for business or for work, you equally put that appointment for other things that are really near and dear to you, including time off to get you to rest and recover and time with family. Now, when you go through this, when you think about like setting boundaries, this could even include setting boundaries for when you're sitting down for your computer. Like, when do you get that 20 or 30-minute break to get up and to walk around? Scheduling in your lunches, scheduling time to do things, right? Just making sure that you're not doing it constantly working for that full, 12, 8, 6, however many hours you're doing. Because there's a lot of science, but also I've personally experienced this, that every hour, every 50 minutes, I will get up for 10 minutes and I will get up and walk around. That's what I used to do at LAPD. I got to do it more often here at home, but it would help me to reset, to reframe it, to like really get out of the space that I was in. And then when I get back to it, I'm always way more productive because I've given myself that time. So take a look at your boundaries. What boundaries do you need to change? What adjustments do you need to make? And how would figuring it out in advance help you solve the problem so that you wouldn't have that problem in the future? Now, when we talk about like this whole idea of like setting boundaries and doing it in advance, it doesn't mean it's going to be right the first time. It doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. What we're doing is we're putting stuff out there to figure out what's going to be best. And as long as we're elevating it, we're looking at it and saying what worked last week, what didn't work last week, we're going to be able to figure out where that sweet spot is for us as long as we continue to take and continue to keep our fingers on our pulse to figure out where we are, what's working and what's not working, and being willing to like really attack the things that aren't working, the things where we feel like we're going down that path of burnout. Because the ego can come in and say, nope, you've just got to push harder. You've just got to work harder. You've just got to sacrifice more. Like that's going to get us to our results. But remember, when you think about this logically, when you're able to show up, when you have more energy, when you're leaning into your heart voice, like we say, you will get yourself to show up on an entirely different energy. It takes you a lot less time to actually do that thing, but you also do it to so much more perfection than when you're leaning into your head voice, when you're exhausted, and when you're just throwing things at the wall. Like those things don't take off because your energy does matter. So that's why step number 1 is always to set clear boundaries. All right, Teresa, you're up. Number 2.
Okay, number 2 is to prioritize self-care. So this is doing activities that recharge you and rejuvenate you. And like a lot of these things are exercise, meditation, because sometimes we need to slow down to speed up. Hobbies. How many of you have hobbies? How many of you have that thing that you love to do in your spare time? And you're probably like, okay, what spare time? I don't have spare time. But if you did have spare time, or if you do make time for these things, like what are some of the things that you like to do? Maybe you like reading, maybe you like crocheting, maybe you like, I don't know, drawing. I really like to color in a reverse coloring book. So that is one thing that I discovered that I enjoy doing. And it's really about kind of having like a page that's already colored. So there's kind of like an image there, but you can use your creativity to draw out the lines. And I create art that way. My daughter is into art as well, so we do stuff together like that. And yeah, and simply, spending time with your family can be another form of self-care. So I know that Amber even, talked about going to the fair today. Like that's another form of self-care because you're detaching yourself from like the hustle and bustle of the day and just enjoying yourself, enjoying time with your family, and just doing something that isn't completely related to maybe your business, but it actually kind of is, because what you're doing is you're reinvigorating yourself and giving yourself space to move away from digging in every single day and then coming back and even kind of getting some ideas. I know a lot of times going for a walk is super helpful. One, you get exercise, right? Outdoors, it's just another form of getting in like fresh air, and just listening to sounds of nature is so helpful. But it also gives you a chance to gain some clarity, because many times, and this probably happens when maybe you're even taking a shower, where you're focused on this one activity, and it can clear your mind of all the other fluff that's going on in your mind. And then maybe you have an issue going on, you have a problem, and because you have more clarity, like you can find a solution. We have come up with so many topics for our podcast, for our videos, for our posts. All the content that you probably see out there was probably from a walk that we took, because we were able to slow down and just let go of things and then really just think about some of the stuff that is going on, some of the tips that we can give people. So, really prioritizing self care is a way for you to avoid burnout.
I love that. I love it. I love it. And I also see Amber here. That is a really great story because Amber says, it made me feel super good because like this is a recharge. Remember, you get to decide if that's going to be a recharge or if it's going to be stress. Okay. I remember going to Disneyland with my kids. And one time I decided that I don't care what happens, I'm going to have the best time ever here. And what's crazy is like we all had a great time. And it's funny because like even at Disneyland, like the kids can complain about the smallest thing, right? And they're like, oh my God, I got to wait in line to get this huge like pretzel that's the size of my head with a bunch of cheese. And it's like, it's like very easily could steer you in the direction of like, this is like frustrating. But in reality, this is your greatest opportunity when you're like, you know what? This is going to be one of those things is going to change the game for me because I'm thinking about this is a recharge. I promise you, Amber, you lean into that story. Check in with me later. Let me know how you feel after you get back from that. Also, Erin had a question. She says, I need to know what a reverse coloring book is. Can you describe that? Or did you already?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe we can share it, but it's basically a coloring book, but not, you don't color, you draw. So it's already colored for you. So let's say that you have there it is. So it's a reverse coloring book and it has the coloring. So then you fill in whatever you want to fill in. So you can draw along those lines and get like a black marker or
I want
something.
to show them one of your masterpieces here.
Oh my gosh.
See? You guys, we are
Did I do
accepting
that one?
money for
Okay.
this. So like she basically gets to color in all the lines and however she wants to do it. And I can also tell that it totally reduces her stress by doing that because she's like super.
That was like an ice cream cone. Like you just use your imagination. You're like, okay, what do I see? It's like an ink blot. It's like, what do I see? Okay, I'm going to draw that. And it's already colored because I actually feel stressful coloring because I'm not really good at coloring, but I'm good at drawing. So, I mean, it was the perfect thing for me. It's something super small, guys. But in the moment, it helps me just relax and just, just find myself in another place other than, the busyness of the day.
100%. And I think like the principle here is finding your version of self-care. We have a lot of like coaches who are here, right? Not only life coaches, but health and fitness coaches. And when people think of self-care, a lot of times they're like exercise and nutrition. And there's like infinite number of self-care. My self-care is video games. I'll literally get on with my son and it's like family time and video games and I get to recharge. And afterwards, like Teresa says, I have so many new ideas because I gave my brain like this space to be able to find them when it's not thinking. And Teresa doesn't enjoy this all the time about business all the time. From the time we wake up to the time we're at night, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And she's like, how about we like put an X on that? And I'm like, okay, I got to do something else. It's just my nature. So I do video games, but everybody's a little different. So finding your thing that will literally get you feel like you're taking care of yourself is all you need. Because remember, it's also about the story, right? If your story is, I use video games for self-care, promise you're going to come out of there and it's going to be self-care. If Teresa plays video games, she uses it and she gets all tensed up and she's like, oh my God, this button isn't working. and it's all about like how, like what we find is the right move for us, right? Okay. Number 3. Carmen says she's watching Friends, by the way. That's like Teresa's like best show of all time. Okay. So number 3, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but it is take regular breaks. Take regular breaks. I want to give you a story. So every single week on Sundays, I have to sit down and come up with 2 different YouTube video ideas, a workshop idea, a call for the Push Coach Certification School. I need to come up with a call for the M&M program, which is our Master Coach Training Program. I have a Push Leader call that I have to come up with stuff. Now I have the Push Elite call with Josh that I need to come. Can you guys hear like all these different things? So about 2 Sundays ago, I'm like, okay, I need to come up with like all this stuff right now, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like literally looking at the cursor. I'm like thinking of different ideas. I'm using like ChatGPT. I'm like, ChatGPT, why don't you write me a script for whatever? And so I'm like literally writing this out and like nothing's hitting home. And I'm like, oh, it's like, it's time for me to work out. And normally what I would do is I would like get frustrated. I would go work out and I would be thinking about it the whole time, and I'd come back and I still wouldn't have any ideas. And instead, what I decided to do, I said, you know what? I need a break from this. Like, I'm just going to go out. I'm going to listen to this freaking incredible playlist song on my podcast app, which just so happens to be Overdrive Radio, which if you haven't heard is freaking incredible. And I just went on a run. I came back and 30 minutes later, I had every single one of those ideas figured out. It was just something, I don't know. I think it was just Jay-Z was screaming at me. I don't know what it was, but it was inspiration. And when I got back, I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to do here, 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 and here. And because I was like leaning into that taking a break, it actually helped me speed up the process. Ask yourself this question. How would me taking a break right now actually speed up the process in the end? I got to tell you, if you're somebody like me, like Kurt, it's like going, taking a break always and coming back always creates this space for me to my brain to actually think. Because when I'm there, like I say, when you're in the box, you can't read the label. But when you get yourself out of the box, you go take a break. It doesn't matter how short or how long. For me, going outside and running, like, I don't know, I just have a million ideas. I do that. I usually do that before a call. So I was like, I'm just going to do this. And by doing that, I leaned into it and I was able to actually come back and pull out all of the notes that I needed to in like less than 45 minutes, which is crazy because I've never done that before. And it's because instead of that time where my brain was like, Mark, lean in, do more, take more action, blah. I was like, nope, let's lean into my heart. How would me going on a run right now actually fuel me with like information so that I could come back and actually over deliver? Now, there's one caveat to this, and that is like I also didn't force it when I was running. I wasn't like, okay, brain, you're just going to think about like what videos you're going to do. I was just like, I'm just going out on a run. That's it. I don't have any ulterior motive. And now as I was running, I just like, it just downloaded from the world. I'm like, where did that come from? That's a great idea. And then how about this idea? And how about this idea? And before I got home, I was like, I got to open up my text thread. And I like copied and pasted it to Teresa because I'm like, I need to like get all this stuff out of my brain because like in a couple minutes, maybe I won't have it. And it's because I allowed myself to take a break. All right. So if you're experiencing that where you're not giving yourself breaks, I want you to see the effects that it's having on you when you don't give yourself breaks. What does your work look like? How much harder is it for you to perform when you are under that kind of stress? And then ask yourself, how can I give myself a break and really check in to see how I feel afterwards? So that is number 3, take regular breaks. All right.
Yeah, and I think that taking breaks is kind of like the overall approach to burnout, because it's like you're forcing, when you're not taking a break, it's like you're forcing something. And that's kind of like the overall thing here is like you're forcing just the work, and you're forcing doing the same things, and you're just forcing everything rather than just stepping back and giving yourself, the ability to take a break and rethink things. Take a break and recharge and do all of that. So I think that's kind of like the overall theme here. Okay, so number 4 is manage your time and task effectively. So, we've talked about this many times before, using time management tools and some techniques, to-do lists, some type of structure, some type of way to structure your work and prevent that overwhelm. So these are obviously strategies and tactics, right? We also got to think about how we're thinking about this, how we're thinking about overall, how we're thinking about our time. Because a lot of us will think, well, I just don't have any time. Well, there's ways to go about that, right? And those are the strategies. But we also have to think about like what our priorities are. Like, what is it that we want to focus on? What's most important right now in the season of life that we're in? I've been talking about this a lot lately. And I think it's probably because of the season of or the season of the year, maybe because kids going back to school. And then also we're trying to get to the end of the year, still trying to achieve our goals that we set for the year. And maybe we're not close and we feel that pressure to try and get there, and then also feel like we're creating momentum for the following year. So I think like there's like this collective stress going on. So, one of the things is just to kind of reevaluate your priorities, think of what's most important for you, and then use those time management tools. Oh, you're muted.
Wouldn't you love it if I was just muted the whole time and my mouth was just moving? Let's be honest here. Yeah,
No.
I really love that, especially at the end when you're talking about like the stories that you can find to actually get you to lean into it. Because if you have a story that's like, I don't have time, well, then you're not willing, your brain isn't willing to see time differently, right? And thinking about things differently, like who can I empower to actually step up and to take these actions and to like make it so that it doesn't have to be all me, but also like get myself to show up on an entirely different level. It's so powerful. I mean, it's the reason why Aaron's on our team right now. It's the reason why I reached out to Kurt. That's the reason why we have everybody who is working on our team, because I'm like, okay, I could probably do all of this, but it would be like super subpar and it would suck. Or I could do the things that only I can do, and I can outsource it to people who do those things better than I could ever do. And by doing it, it's like this collective power and wisdom and problem solving and also creativity, because all of our heads together is like so much more powerful. But you don't have that opportunity if you think that you don't have enough time. If you think that you're going through this situation and nobody else is experiencing it like you, right? So when you can lean into like, there's millions of different possibilities, and I just have to be open to finding it, you will find different ways to do that, whether it's growing a team or anything like that, to make you so that you can create more by doing less. That's a great question. It's like, how can I create more by doing less? Because there's an answer out there if you're willing to like really tap into that, okay? All right, number 5 is to seek social support, all right? Seek social support. Now, there's a caveat to this. We have a video that's coming out next week of the 4 people that actually we didn't realize were actually holding us back in our lives. But when you're seeking social support, people that you like really respect, people that you look up to, people who care for you, but also not the people who enable you. What I mean by that is like, for me personally, if I were to reach out to my mom, if I'm telling her I'm doing 1 video a week, she's like, son, that's too much. Like, you need to take a break. Like, that's just like overload. Like, you're just, I don't know what you're going to. And so no matter what, she's going to be like that. She's my mom. I love her for it. Right. But at the same time, I'm not going to take her advice in terms of to do like 1 10-minute video a week and that's it. Right. And so I'm like, who do I reach out to that has like the similar or same, not only goals, but also priorities and core values as me? And it's not necessarily going to let me off the hook, but at the same time, they're not going to make me or let me run myself into the ground. And so when you have these conversations, you can have them more openly. So that way you're not pretending like it's not there. I promise you, if you're starting to experience burnout, people know. They can sense it. They can see what's going on, right? And so having this conversation with people you respect is going to be super helpful, because it helps you open up this support community. Because the one thing that your brain will always try to convince you is that you're alone, you're going through this by yourself, and you shouldn't tell anybody else, because what are they going to think of you? And everything's going to implode, right? And none of those are true statements, but that's what our brain tries to do to get us from feeling uncomfortable. It's what the ego will do. So instead, seek social support, whether that's a professional in the field, right? Maybe a therapist or somebody who can help you there, whether it's a coach that you reach out to and get some support from a coach, or a team or a mentor, something like that, so you can get some additional help. Just make sure that, of course, they're in alignment with not only what you want to create, but also your values and what you truly like feel is like near and dear. And they're not going to be somebody who's going to be what I term an enabler. And that means like they steer you away from the path of taking any action at all. There's this happy medium in the middle. So be very cautious of your support system. And that video is going to be out next week. If you are an inner circle member of the team, you already have access to that. You can see all the videos that we did that we have up as extra. But if you're not an inner circle member, it will come out next Monday. Okay. Teresa, number 6.
Okay, number 6 is delegate when possible. So if there are tasks that can be handed off to somebody else, do that. Delegating really allows you to focus on tasks that are essential and align with your strengths. So, I mean, Mark mentioned it earlier. Aaron has now taken on some of our tasks, and Kurt, of course, is a huge part of the team, and he helps so much. We couldn't do all of this video editing and even coming up with topics and things like that. So like, we have this team, but even if you don't have a team, you can always utilize the people around you. You don't have to pay people. Like, there's people out there who would be willing to help you with like little tasks that would take them off your plate to give you more space and more time to do the things that are really important. Delegation is something that people hate to do. It's not something that like people are just like willing to do, especially like us parents. We're like, oh well, we just need to do it all, right? And we try to like perform at a high level when we're so bogged down with so many things that we need to do. I mean, Mark listed some of the things that he does in the business, but that doesn't include all the dad stuff, right? That doesn't include all the training that he's doing with our puppy right now. I mean, there are so many things that we are doing in our lives, and sometimes even writing it down can, make you like really open your eyes and say, I have to do something. Like I have to take stuff off my plate or I'm just going to completely burn out. I'm just going to find myself exhausted, being snippy, and just like it's not going to be good. So if you can catch it beforehand, delegation is one of those strategies that is a game changer.
Yeah, and even when it comes to delegation, you can even find systems and programs and stuff that you can
Mhm.
delegate stuff to, like making posts and stuff on social media. Chat GPT kind of comes to mind. All these different things are different ways that you can like not only outsource but delegate certain things, and it doesn't have to actually be a human. But I'm guessing that if you have kids, especially if you have them on an allowance, that you probably want them to do some work for it. So why not get them to start doing some work in your business? Why don't you get them to start sending some messages or start doing something that they're really good at? Which reminds me, she still hasn't done this for me, but Alyssa was going to create, because she's got a creative imagination, she was going to create some emojis for us here on Modern Leadership. So as a part of the inner circle, you get like special emojis, and I actually paid somebody to do those. And when she saw them, she's like, Dad, why don't you just ask me? Like I can 100% do this. And I'm like, oh, well then let's do that. Right. But I told her and she still hasn't gotten back to me. She's maybe a procrastinator, but that's another video, another subject, another time. Right. But first, for sure, delegate, outsource, get other people involved. It's also really powerful when it is like your family and you get them involved. Sometimes they can meet you there and they can actually have some type of buy-in and they know exactly what you're doing now. And it just changes the whole game when they change that perspective. Okay. So number 7 is set realistic expectations. So number 7 is set realistic expectations. So here is something that I found that I struggle with as well. But a lot of the people who tend to follow me also struggle with this. And that's the idea of perfectionism. And that is like, it has to be perfect. Everything has to be done. It has to all be worked out. It has to go exactly as planned. And like, we can't get off script on the videos. Like everything has to be perfect. And if it's not, then we stress out and we actually work harder to try and make it perfect. What's crazy though is a lot of this perfection stuff happens before I even launch it and put it out there. And it's like all of this extra work is actually happening because I'm deciding beforehand what perfect looks like. And when you have those kind of expectations where you have them, they're just off the charts and you're trying to do this with everything that you do, it does create this little like extra stress inside of you, but it leads you down that path of burnout. And when you're experiencing that burnout, it's because you do have these like unrealistic expectations. So one of my mentors said, 70% perfect is perfect, 100% perfect is failure. So if you're trying to wait until it's totally perfect before you put it out there, you're putting in so much extra work and energy on this side that by literally putting it out there, you would have been able to figure it out way sooner. And no matter when you do put it out there, it's still going to need to be perfected. It's still going to need to be changed. So really making sure that you have realistic expectations so that you know that, hey, this is just the way that the process works is going to help you not only avoid that process of going down burnout, but actually put things out in the world that truly do make an impact. All right, you're up.
I love that. Okay,
Thanks.
number 8 is what?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So number 8 is to stay connected to your purpose. So we always want to remind ourselves of the why behind our work. So when we're feeling kind of like this deep connection to our purpose or the impact of our work, it can serve kind of like as a buffer against burnout. So there's always that, higher purpose, that bigger why of why you're doing this. And that way you can look at all of these other strategies and think about what you can do to maintain that course. You're on a course, you're on a mission. So what can you do to actually stay within that course without burning out? So always reminding yourself of the impact that you're going to make, the reason why you started your business, right? Because sometimes we can forget why we're doing this. And the constant reminder of that can be, like I said, a buffer against burnout.
100%. I mean, remember we did that podcast. We actually did the YouTube live on it. Like I think you called it, was it the entrepreneur's mindset? Yeah, the entrepreneurial mindset, and like how to actually, no, that's a totally different video. It's like how to get it to your why, right? How to use your business why, find your business why, and really explore that to like lean into. And 100%, like being able to stay connected to it is a game changer. And Aaron, I will get Alyssa to work on that immediately. Okay. Hey. Okay. I'll go tell her after this. All right. Are we on 9? Yes, we're on 9. So number 9 is my favorite. It's called continuous learning. People are like, what do you mean? Like, isn't that going to cause you to burn out more? And the answer is, if you do it right, no, it won't. Think about this. Like, as you're continuing to learn new things outside of the field that you're in, outside of that specific business, and you're learning to grow and get better at things, I don't know about you guys, but it just creates a totally different energy in me. It's an energy of like, I'm learning new things. I'm finding new ways out. Here's the thing. If we're currently getting stuck in what we've always done, we're never going to have an opportunity to actually get to where we want to be. And when we're learning, when we're continually figuring out different ways of doing things, it opens the door for this idea of hope in your brain of like, you know what? It's possible for me to do more or achieve more without having to do more. And when you start getting open to those ideas and you put yourself in the environment to learn, to grow, you will find those answers all the time. But if you're stuck in this is just the way that I have to do it, and in order for me to achieve more, I have to do more, you're going to be perpetually spinning in this cycle that you're actually going to manifest burnout for yourself. So instead, ask yourself, what is a way that I can learn and that I can grow, whether it's in this area or even something outside of this area? For me personally, like let's say I'm struggling with sleep. Well, I pick up some sleep books. I dive into some different research. I do all of these different things because the more that I know about that, the more that it empowers me to sleep more, the more that I just make adjustments to my day because I'm like getting this new information and these new downloads from the world because I'm open to finding solutions. So figuring out like how can you continue to learn? I mean, obviously we do that every single week with you guys here on Modern Leadership. So that's one way you can do it is just make sure you subscribe and continue watching these videos, right? And leaning into the things that you need to learn the most. And when you do that, it just creates an entirely different energy and it gets you to show up on an entirely different level, but it also allows you to take a second to go, there's a new way of doing this. Because if I'm constantly stuck in the old way of doing this, I'm going to constantly get the same feelings and the same reactions, the same results that I'm getting right now. But there's a new way and I have to be willing to find it. And as long as you're learning, you will find it. All right.
Yep.
Take us home.
Okay. So tip number 10 is to seek professional help. Now, we mentioned this before, but it's good to reiterate that. But if you feel like the onset of burnout is coming up for you, you just can't manage your own stress, you want to consider finding some help from either a counselor, a therapist, or a coach really kind of specializing in stress management or like occupational burnout, right? 'Cause sometimes we don't know the level of burnout we're getting to, and getting someone to ask us questions and to really dive into like what's happening, what are some of the symptoms that you're experiencing, like what are some of the outcomes of those symptoms, and how far along you are, can really help in putting a stop to it and really taking care of the problem before it becomes a really big issue.
I love that. I love it. And Carmen just wrote in the chat here that she has a lot of free resources. Carmen, how can people best get a hold of you if they need some resources? Because there's going to be some people who potentially make it here to the end and they're like, I do want some extra professional help resources. And I want you guys to be able to reach out to her. So we'll see what she's going to say in the chat and we'll allow you guys to get in contact with her. Thank you for stepping up and doing that. Remember, guys, so we went through these 10 things, these 10 different like strategies. Pick one of them to implement this week. We didn't do this so that you can implement all 10 right now. So based off of what you heard, what is the one strategy that you're going to lean into this next week? And what kind of impact do you think it's going to make on not only you, but your family and the world? So pick that one resource based off of what we talked about, all these 10 different tips, and lean into it because it's all about being proactive, not being reactive. Of course, sometimes we'll get to the point where we do hit rock bottom. That's what I did. And you do have to get reactive. But anytime that you can do it and solve the problem in advance, we want you to do that because it's going to create so much less stress on you. And it's also not going to actually affect the rest of your family. Because I promise you, if you're experiencing burnout, they're experiencing the repercussions of it. And I know that we don't want to feel that way, but it's reality of like, if we aren't taking care of ourselves and we are putting ourselves down the path of burnout, it is going to have an exponential effect on our family. Plus also we're teaching them through our own behavior what they can expect when they get older. And I never want to do that. We want to make sure that we're leading them from this place of like, we're leading from the front. We're doing the uncomfortable things. We're getting help and we're really attacking this because it's not only important to me, but it's important to set up my family and the future for them to let them know that this is not something that we're willing to deal with. Okay. Now, I do want to say you might get to this point of the training and you're like, you know what, but there are days that sometimes I do wake up. I feel like I have an off day. I feel like I might, it's not necessarily burnout, but I wake up and I can't turn it around. Like I can't turn around those days really, really quickly. And we actually created a video for you guys. It's called how to navigate the days when you're having an off day instead of forcing it and instead being able to flip it around. So if you're somebody who you ever have off days, or you're just like, I wonder like, what are the strategies that Mark and Teresa talk about when they do have off days to be able to switch it around so they can get into their heart, definitely hit that up. I'll leave you the link inside of the description. I'll leave the video at the end. And I lastly want to say, thank you guys so much for not only being here, but having this difficult conversation with us, talking about burnout, talking about something that a lot of people don't talk about. And by you literally asking these questions and you being here, it shows me that you are the leader that not only is already going to take charge of this, because why would you even be here at the end if you weren't, but that you can pass this on to your people to make sure that they aren't burning out too. So I appreciate you guys for doing that. Of course, if you're not a part of our inner circle, definitely check that out below. You can click the join button. You can learn a little bit about how some of the things that we do behind the scenes, which was like a live Q&A that we did yesterday with a lot of you beautiful people who are here. But regardless, we want you to keep crushing it, keep being the leader that you need to be now more than ever. And if there's anything we can do, of course, if you can reach out to Amber or Carmen, you can definitely reach out to her. But I appreciate you guys so much. You guys have an incredible weekend and we'll see you guys next Saturday. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.